want full abortion access.
Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to this very special edition of the 51% coming to you from New York. It's our last show of the year, so we're taking a look at whether 2018 was indeed the year of the woman. So what have been some of the more extraordinary moments in the last 12 months? In May, we saw an historic referendum in the Irish Republic which demolished the ban on abortion and means that women will be able to gain access to abortion services as early as next year. In June, Saudi women were allowed to drive for the first time. However, there are reports that some of the female activists who worked to lift the ban are now in jail and apparently being tortured. The Indian Supreme Court ruled that adultery was no longer a crime, striking down a 158-year-old colonial-era law which treated women as male property. In a country better known for war and famine, Ethiopia made history this year when its Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed recently filled half of his cabinet with women. Then the parliament appointed the first ever female president, Sahle-Worke Zewde. And in November, a record number of women were voted into the US Congress, 106 of them being from the Democratic Party, while only 19 were Republicans. However, America is still far from reaching political parity. The New York Times was one of the two media outlets whose coverage of the Harvey Weinstein affair led to the Me Too movement. I went to meet Susan Chira, one of the journalists behind the Times coverage, who this year won a Pulitzer Prize for her reporting. Susan, thank you so much for your time. Let me start by asking you the big question. Was 2018 well and truly the year of the woman?
I think that 2018 was a year in which women played a hugely consequential role, particularly in the midterm elections as voters and as candidates. But in some ways, I'd go back a year and I'd start looking at what started when the Me Too movement exploded in 2017 and the momentum that that encountered. And you could even go back to 2016 when President Trump was elected, and at his inauguration, hundreds of thousands to millions of women marched around the country and the world in a kind of I am here moment. So I think a lot of the attention to women's role in society, their rights, their lack of rights, their sexual harassment, the glass ceiling on multiple levels has been building for some time. And 2018 was the year when it entered the political realm.
You won a Pulitzer Prize for your coverage for the New York Times of workplace sexual harassment, which eventually led to the creation of the Me Too movement. More than a year on, how much has changed and how much has not?
I think that what essentially has happened is there are a whole range of reactions. There are men who worry that they are being falsely accused or that innocent gestures are being misinterpreted. And I know in France and other places there are similar worries. There are men who believe that this has been exaggerated or that they should not be punished the way they have been punished. There are women who fear, and we saw this in the United States during the confirmation hearings of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Some of the women said, oh my God, my son, my husband could be falsely accused. So there are a range of backlash, but I believe that movement is continuing.
These are stories that when you and I started out in journalism were very much regarded in those days as being back of the book. Now they're page one. What made your editors realise that it deserves such coverage?
For many years, it's true that editors thought of these issues as inconsequential and weren't as aware of the lack of representation. And I think it was a combination of women's issues becoming more culturally, politically, financially important, and understanding that there are women who read us as well as men who are very interested in these issues, and an advancement in the sense of the scope of these issues. So it wasn't so much that we had to like fight a guerrilla war. It was that gradually there became more and more understanding that this was news and this was not peripheral, this was not the women's pages. This was absolutely something that society was grappling with.
Yet the reality is America still lags way behind other countries when it comes to political parity. Why is that the case?
I think it's absolutely true. We should remember that despite the record number of women elected to Congress, they make up less than a quarter of the Congress. So they're still very much in the minority. I think there are a lot of issues. Women running for office is arduous and requires a lot of money in the American political system. And women had less access to money. That's why organizations like Emily's List, which funnels donations to women, have been such an important part of helping women get the access that they need in this political system where money dominates so much. That's one of the issues. There were also issues of women, as they often do, thinking they needed to be more qualified than men to raise their hands and run for office, needing to be persuaded to run for office, maybe not thinking that they were ready, whereas men were all too ready to think that they were ready. So I think there are a combination of cultural and financial and structural barriers.
But many still see America as being at the forefront of women's rights. Do you think that's still the case?
That's a good question. And I guess as an American, I'm so aware of our shortcomings in this issue. I mean, for example, 2018 was also the year where the percentage of women who are CEOs fell because there are so few that several retired or were pushed out. So that, women are not at the top in a number of industries, not just politics. And so I see halting progress. I see enormous progress, but halting progress.
So what does that mean for America, say, 50 years from now?
I think we've got to shoot for parity. I don't know if we'll get it, but the goal is that women should be represented in our life roughly equivalent to their representation in the population.
Susan Chira, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
To Brazil now, and the recent election of the populist politician Jair Bolsonaro is being viewed by many as being a major setback for women's rights. The pro-life president-elect has made it clear that he's no fan of feminism. Our team on the ground went to meet the women who are getting ready to oppose him.
In Brazil, Maria Tucana became a media symbol of the feminist fight against Jair Bolsonaro. She was assaulted on September 24th in the middle of the presidential election.
When I passed by, they went out behind the car. Then they knocked me in the head and punched me in the face.
She thinks she was attacked because of her activism against Bolsonaro. Maria asked to meet up far from her home because she fears harassment. Still, she refuses to abandon her fight.
We cannot be weakened. Just because I was assaulted, I am not going to stop fighting or stop resisting. I have nieces whom I love, daughters of my friends who are growing up now, and I want them to become strong women so that they too will resist and fight.
Maria is a founder of the movement Ele No, which means not him. What started as a women's initiative attracted thousands of diverse people who wanted to block the far-right candidate. But he still was elected with 56% of votes. Now in Sao Paulo, activists from the Socialism and Liberty Party plan their opposition.
Jair Bolsonaro has been a long-time threat to various parts of society. Women, the LGBTI population, the black population. I believe the problem was that we were not able to fight back with the same intensity as him.
To address Bolsonaro's threat, some newly elected lawmakers also took part. Taliria Petroni first entered public office as a city councilor from Niterói, an outskirt of Rio. She was the only woman in City Hall, where she sharpened her political skills. In February, she will become a federal congresswoman in Brasilia, where only 15% of lawmakers are women.
There's a risk of moving backward from the current law on abortion. Today, a woman can end a pregnancy only in case of rape, malformation in the child, or when her life is at risk. And that's the minimum.
To guarantee these rights, they say they first need a strategy for Congress.
The first step is to form the widest possible People's Front, which can guarantee democratic liberties. It must guarantee the right to organize and debate, and the rights of the Constitution of 1988.
Though Bolsonaro is not president yet, women are already planning their resistance.
And that's it for the special edition. We'll be taking a break over the holiday season, but we will be back in 2019. So until then, wishing all of you happy holidays. In the meantime, we're going to leave you with some images of some of the wonderful people we've met and the places we've been to in the last 12 months. So until our next show, bye for now. What made you come up with the idea? In all areas